All right, guys, we got episode number 21 of Almost in Agreement going out right now. I've got my friend Seth Melton. He runs a fantasy football podcast. It's called Fantasy Football on Tap. You can look them up. If you're into fantasy football and you need some like real, actual knowledge of smart things, then this podcast is one that I've seen that does way more than I know about it, which isn't a high bar to beat. AC is in the office protecting Knoxville from Corona people, and Max's wife's got a concert, so he's supporting his wife. How lame is that? But that's all I've got as far as an intro goes, so let me switch some buttons, fade this out, and we'll get Seth in here. Seth, you back with us?
I am.
All right, cool. So like I said in the intro, Seth has got a podcast. If you want to do a quick minute of promo yourself, and we'll do it again at the end in case people forget, but promo your show, tell them what it's about. I've listened to a handful of episodes. I retired from fantasy football about 3 years ago because I was always the bubble kid, and so I gave up on it. I don't know. Give us the background on how you got into doing that and that kind of thing.
Well, yeah, I talked with my friends multiple times on the phone throughout the day about fantasy football and was always researching stuff. So I was like, why not just do a podcast? I'm going to talk about it anyway. I might as well just record it and put some knowledge out there for people or people thinking about getting back into fantasy. Someone like you who's like, oh, I can just listen to this and I don't have to do all the research because it's there for me. And then one of the things that I always do, I actually live in Asheville, North Carolina. You and me met during our time in Knoxville. But being in Asheville, I try to do a beer of the day just because I have access to so many different breweries and bottle shops around here. So that's something that I'm also passionate about, just different beer.
I'm drinking a beer that was brewed in Asheville right now.
Which one is that?
It's the Cigar City's Florida Man, I think. No, it's the Fancy Papers.
Perfect.
They run out of Tampa, but they're co-brewing with Oscar Blues there in Asheville.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, I just try to incorporate the two. It really just came down to the simple fact that I was talking about fantasy football all day, so I figured I might as well just record it and put it out there for people to listen to.
So I've been our origin stories are pretty similar. It's the normal show when everything goes to plan, which it never does. It's myself, Sam, who's on the phone with us. Our friend AC, who he's a nurse at UT Hospital there, or one of the hospitals downtown. I don't remember. I don't pay that much attention. But he's on the COVID unit, and so he's been overtime, and then he's been traveling into other cities to help out with them and stuff like that. And then Max, who's my business partner at the shop, and he used to. You've met him a couple times, probably at that bar that I don't mention because I don't like those guys. But I'm sure you've met the man. But yeah, essentially this podcast is between 2 and 10 years of different combinations of the four of us arguing about eventually politics every time. It always comes back around to politics for us. And it's like one of the things we don't get, or one of the things for me that really kicked it over to let's actually do this as a podcast instead of just drinking in my basement and yelling at each other, was that, one of the things we all agree on is that we don't hear ourselves in the media. We don't hear people like us that actually exist out there. And my opinion, and personally, is that I don't feel like I'm that special or unique. I think I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people that have at least some of the core values that I have on what America is supposed to be and stuff like that. And you just never hear those people in the media. And so that's kind of where we got kicked off. So the first thing for me, leaning on somebody with more sports knowledge, having you on the show, is we're coming up to football season. There's been all this stretch and stuff. Because coronavirus is all we've tried not to talk about it, but we can't do a weekly show that involves politics and world issues and not talk coronavirus, but to put at least a little sports spin on it. Like, what do you see? Like, how do you see this this pro football season? Because you're more pro than college. I know you like them both, but you're more of a pro fan, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I tell everybody the same thing. I'm such a big Denver Broncos fan that I really just focus on them. I've tried to be a Tennessee Vols fan a couple times. Specifically, I remember the game distinctly against Oklahoma. It was after a friend's wedding, and that was a terrible game to be a fan of. There was another one against Florida. I was like, man, I can't handle the drama of the Broncos and the Vols without having a heart attack. So I just
See, that's why. See, I can do it because I'm a Packers fan and we win more often.
Didn't you win like 2 in the last 25 years or something?
2 Super Bowls, but we still win. We have winning seasons more than
3.
More than not.
I have like 3 in the last like 22 seasons.
Okay. Just saying, well, how many winning seasons have you had in the last 22
Quite a,
seasons?
quite a few.
I'm pretty sure.
Pat Bolin, since he took over about 33 years ago, has one of the highest winning percentages in all of major
See, I
sports.
can't argue this because I don't know the specifics, but I'm pretty sure since what was it? Since
You guys went from Favre to Rodgers. You've been pretty fortunate.
I'm not gonna I'm not disagreeing with that at all. I mean, you did go from Elway to something to somebody to something to somebody to Peyton to something to somebody to something to somebody, and whoever
Yeah,
the
it was a
name
long
is,
run.
whoever the name is now, because
Drew
Max,
Lock.
because this is how I know you know Max is a big Broncos fan, and Max
Okay.
and I don't know if you remember this, but Max and I flew up to Denver for a Packers Broncos game like 5 years ago.
Was it the Peyton game?
No, maybe I don't remember. Your Broncos beat the tar out of us that night. It was not
I
a
think it
fun
was the
night.
Peyton game because
Yeah,
they were kind of worried. That was the year we won the Super Bowl. It
yeah,
was
because
kind of
we
like, are we going to be able to do something? And then we showed up and like just destroyed the
right,
Packers.
and the Packers' first half of the season was really good, and then they started struggling, and then I think we were coming off a bye week, and I was like, all right, coming off the bye week, we're gonna get our shit together, and we're gonna make a solid run, and then I think we still made the playoffs that year, but I think it was like a wild card loss in the first round.
But we got a little off topic. You were asking me kind of about the COVID, the season,
Oh,
things
just get
like
used to the
that.
premise. We're gonna get off topic.
That's fine. Have no worries there. But you were asking me kind of about the season. Well, what we're seeing with the NBA has been very, very successful with their bubble. Um, and the NFL to me needs to go ahead and get a contingency place in plan to have some sort of bubble, because we've seen MLB kind of already have some outbreaks.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Was it like
Which
the Marlins team got stranded in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, which from what I've read about him, I don't follow baseball a lot, but the new commissioner Rob Manfred's an idiot.
Well,
Uh,
it's not a high bar to cross with my Brewers old Drew Brewers GM that was commissioner forever.
well,
Sealing.
a team cheats. It's openly admitted that they cheated, and nobody gets suspended. But then, like one guy retaliates and throws a pitch behind a couple players, and he's suspended 8 games. Give me a break. But he's committed to the MLB pushing on. So I've told everybody this: if the MLB and NHL's, from what I've seen, has minimal outbreaks as well. If all those sports are playing, the NFL, who found a way to host the NFL draft in the middle of this,
Right.
is going to find a way to play.
I
It's
agree.
just that simple.
I agree. I think like one of the big things that Sam and I were talking about this on last week's show is the finances. That's going to be the very
Yeah.
interesting one, and how all these finances are going to break down. Because if my understanding is correct, the majority of team income is game sales, ticket sales, stuff at games, merch and stuff like that. I know they get some from TV contracts and stuff like that, but as far as like paying the bills, butts and seats is a big chunk of that. And
Right. So the salary cap has already been shifted, I believe, for this year and next year. So that's going to. So there was a lot of. I think this is one of the few times where a lot of deals didn't get done on franchise tags toward the end because they didn't know the implications of the salary cap, what it would be next year, and then all of a sudden you're gridlocked in a situation that you weren't expecting. When these salary cap gurus are doing these deals 3 years ago, they're looking at this year and players coming off, and so it just really throws that guy for a wrench.
Right.
So there's very huge trickle down factors involved in this.
yeah, I mean that's what I see too. I find it it's going to be interesting. Like I think you're right. I think you're dead on. I think they'll figure it out. They're going to play. It is going to be a little bit more difficult just because of the size of roster versus baseball, basketball, and hockey. They have such a small roster comparatively. I mean, I think a full roster in hockey right now is 26.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I was reading an article today. They were talking about the Predators General of Operations, who organizes all their travel, food, and all that, etc. I want to say they said he organizes for 43 people. So I guess that's all the trainers and
Coaches. And,
assistants and everybody all together. They
yeah.
had to get up to Toronto, I guess, is where they're at now.
Yeah. What is they just announced in football that they've cut preseason out altogether, but they'd initially changed the preseason rosters down to like 98 or
So it went from 90 to 80, and then your overall roster on game day is like, I think it's actually 55 now or something.
Yeah.
So and then you add in positional coaches. You're still traveling with anywhere from 70, 80 plus people, if not more.
Right.
So and then you talk about college football, who has even more massive rosters.
Right. Like, because I know college football is weird because you can have a different roster at home than away.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
you're allowed to dress more players when you're at home than you are in an away game, and then you always have recruits coming in to sit in games and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like the rabbit hole of the same conversation in college football is a whole different animal. Because I mean, to put the pretense on that they're actual students too changes everything. And then like you have a university. I mean, right now UT is planning on having some in class stuff available, but a bunch of it online. It's like, well, you got some of these campuses. I think what Sam, you were saying the other day that all of the University of Californias are.
Yeah, I thought I read that the other day. That they went to like all online learning, I think.
Which I guess might make it a little easier for them to track and trace then, because the only kids on campus are going to be the football players. It might actually be accidentally helpful.
Yeah,
because that's the only sports they have.
Well, I mean, I know I saw something come up about a couple of the other fall sports and the different activities they have going on with it, but same premise. You got to, what's UT's 30,000 when it's in session. 30,000. But if that's only 2,000 of the active athletes and they're the only ones on campus, that makes it a little easier to control that volume of people.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it's interesting to look at how the different sports have adapted to this. I mean, UFC hasn't stopped for a second. Dana White pretty much like bought an island to host his own fights.
Yeah, they've got fights going on right now, actually.
And I mean, I know it's not technically a sport, but these people are still athletic. Wrestling has continued to go on in different crowds, and so when you look at all these businesses finding ways to continue on, it's just hard to imagine how the juggernauts of sports don't find a way to get through it as well. I mean, basketball took a huge break off, and then here we are back again. It's
right.
Like, we're
hockey
not just going to call it quits.
Yeah, hockey as well. They took. I mean, right now is technically hockey's got one of the shorter off seasons in most major sports, and I think right now, like usually, the playoffs usually end in early July.
Yeah,
and then hockey starts back up with preseason in late September, early October, and then the actual season starts late October. So that's another one. I don't know what hockey's going to do with that. That's another good question. I guess if it works well, if things function well in this kind of mini modified playoff system that they're doing starting tonight, they'll at least have some data to work with. But it's going to have to be at least a shortened season.
Well, I think the most interesting thing is we were talking about school, but I'd say the majority of all these athletes have kids that go to school. So if their kids are going back to school, then all of a sudden, they're at higher risk to catch COVID or whatever. So it can be a big, for God's sakes, Philip Rivers has like 10 kids. He's bound to get it at some point.
Right. But at the same time, though, I mean, how many? It depends. I mean, I don't know. I guess that's the question. I don't know how they're doing it in basketball and hockey in the current situation. I mean, how much are these players getting? I mean, they're in the bubble, as you called it. How much out of the bubble do they get?
Yeah, and I have no idea. And mainly the articles I've read is that players, the veterans of the locker room, are like, we have to hold these players accountable, each other. It's like you can't be going to the nightclubs, you can't be going to the parties with your friends, you can't be seeing a different girl. You're the new rookie who signed a big deal. You can't be seeing a new girl every night. It's like those are the conversations we have to have in the locker room right now. The Drew Brees, the Tom Brady, those guys have to be the ones to kind of speak up and be like, quit the shit, okay?
Right, because the wheels fall off of this real fast, and we lose a whole team, and then that throws the whole season off kilter because the league's trying to catch up to try to figure out how to get games back on. So then I guess to roll it back to your actual podcast, I mean, how do you see all these different changes changing fantasy football?
So, the interesting thing is that my league never does injured reserve spots, and we've actually already voted on 2. And typically, for most part, I take things to a league vote. And this is the situation where, like, if it gets to be bad, I'm just going to allow like an unlimited IR spots for players diagnosed with COVID because the NFL has said they have to be at a minimum of 3 weeks.
Right.
So you don't want to have. I don't do snake drafts anymore. I do auction drafts, but you don't want to have like your top 3 or 4 picks like out for 3 weeks. Then you have to drop them all just to remain relevant.
Right.
So
Now the
we've got
question is the program, whatever program you like to use to help you run your league, going to have a IR for COVID substat?
So Sleeper is a new app. It used to just be like a news app, and they've kind of become a fantasy platform. They've already added the button. They're actually one of the fastest to add like these new features. So they've actually already added allow COVID players on IR. Yahoo to me is pretty much still in business because it's one of the largest fantasy platforms, if not the largest. So it's kind of stupid that they don't have it already. Sleeper's a very small team. I think it's like 30 to 40 people that are behind this. And it's like, man, they've already are on top of this. For the love of God, you fantasy companies that have been in, like, if commissioners of leagues are already having conversations about it, then the fantasy platform should already be on top of it.
Right.
It's kind of how I view it. So I think most situations, though, you can put like a 0, like, or allow unlimited players if you want to. And if they're ruled out, which in that case they would be, you should be able to put them on there. And then, one of the things we talked about was just having a contingency plan. And for us, it was like, if the season's canceled, we're just going to refund the money. We're not going to do this whole, like, if they play 8 games, this is what we're doing. If they play 12 games, this is what they're doing. I just don't have time for that.
Right. That makes sense. So, football. I mean, I'm excited. I'm ready for a little bit of normalcy. Like, I'm not a big NASCAR fan, but I've been watching a bunch of races just because that's all I got.
Man, I haven't even really turned on the basketball game yet. Of course, I got a newborn at home. She's about to turn 2 months. So that's also occupying a lot of time.
Yeah, that's a lame excuse.
As it should. And I don't want her first sport to be NASCAR that she watches. So
hey, I mean, it's the story behind it. So
yeah,
you got into this because of mass death and pandemic.
Yeah, so I don't want to be like drink Busch Light and turn left.
I've been curious. I saw some highlights of, I guess, an NBA game or two, and they had LCD screens kind of going around the bubble or whatever kind of facility they're in, and it looked like there was maybe live fans, almost kind of like Zooming or teleconferencing in.
Yeah, so there's
because you could see it was a whole bunch of faces all around.
Yeah. So that's kind of interesting. Like Dirk Nowitzki popped in on like the Dallas game the other night, so it's kind of cool to see. I think other places have talked about doing that, and I know they've talked about like pumping the crowd noise.
Well, yeah, I heard that. I heard they were doing that in baseball, where like you could get on an app or something like that, and like you could hit a cheer or a boo, and it would pipe in. So like everybody on the app, if everybody's cheering on the app, it's pumping in cheer noises of the stands. If everybody's booing on the app, you can hear it on the TV, which that's fun.
Somebody's gonna hack that and just start cussing and saying crazy stuff.
Well, I mean,
like they figured out the big Twitter hack. I read the other day, it was like some 17-year-old kid down in Florida
just messing around.
They did like the Bitcoin. They got a hold of like 10 or 15 major Twitter accounts and was putting out like Bitcoin sales or something.
Yeah, that's where they say like they get a celebrity that's like, no, everybody's out there hurting right now. Send me $100 or send whatever in Bitcoin to me, and I'll send you twice as much back.
Yeah, I can't remember what the message said.
Yeah, that was
either trying to sell Bitcoin or
No, the big scam one was that, whereas it was they'd get a celebrity account and they'd be like, hey, I know you're struggling out there. Send me however much you send me on a Cash App or one of these money transfer things. I'll send you twice as much back. And so people were sending like hundreds and $500, and the kid just keeps it. But
I think they're smart, advertising people out there and all the teams. They'll figure out a way to make some money, even with being cash strapped.
You're right. I mean, I think that's what, for me, especially because I always argue this kind of more free market approach to things and letting ingenuity win. And we're already seeing it in all the different things that are happening. Like basketball, like we want to play basketball, we got to figure out how to do it. And so they went through all sorts of stuff. I mean, Dana White, for all his craziness, he's like, I'm putting fights on. Now I heard on the Dana White thing though that part of that was that Disney ESPN contract, that he had to have a certain number of fights to get that $1 whatever deal he had. And so part of the reason he was so desperate to get fights off was he's running out of time. Like he was supposed to have like 36 fights in 2020.
Well, it's similar because WWE has to host so many live shows. So they were filming them like weeks before, and then they had to go back to live because their contract with USA says you have to do live shows. So they had to find the companies at the top are just like, find a way around it.
Right.
They're like, we don't really give a shit. You need to fix it.
Right. Which but I think it's great. It's making stuff happen that if they could have excused their way out of it, they might have. Dana White might be crazy enough he would have put fights on anyway. But I mean, these guys are trying to figure out a way to make things happen, and it's for us, the consumer's best interest, is that we're getting fights now. We're getting WWE if you're into that. We're getting basketball now. It's not just because they want to play. It's because they have positive incentive to get it back on. And they also have positive incentive to do it safely, because if they don't do it safely, then they're going to be in trouble down the road. And so I think that's fantastic. I think it's great. That's free market at work, and I love it.
Yeah, so two things real quick. A, I love that on your podcast and mine both, you just hear random beers being opened during the show. So that's
well, we're
that random crack that happens occasionally.
The goal is to get a beer sponsor. That's the goal, is to get some beer to sponsor us. And so whomever's out there, we've been winking and nodding at Monday night down in Atlanta, but they haven't gotten back to us yet. So I rescind saying their name out loud. But that would be the goal here, is that if we can get if we can just get somebody sending us a couple of cases of beer a month, this podcast is officially a win.
Yeah. For me, I know that if I move back to Tennessee, I know some of the brewery owners back in my hometown of Cookeville, and I've spoken to one previously about doing like a live show from his tap room like once a month, and like filming it, but taking like, at the beginning, I just have to like tell my friends to come and be like, hey, I just need you to ask me questions about fantasy so we can answer them and have a show, But I was like, it's free advertisement for him. It's a live show for me that doesn't necessarily always happen in the podcast world. So it's just like, it's something different that I can bring to the table that some people can't. So I was like, well, that would be cool to do.
Yeah.
That would be very cool to do. Yeah, I've gotten friendly with a couple of them here. Actually, one of my kids' scout friends' dad is one of the local brewery owners, and he's a good dude. But I don't know. I get weird about that with that one specifically, just because it's a tangential friend. Like, he's not far enough out that it's just basically asking a stranger to give me money. I'm okay with that. But somebody that's in that kind of weird middle friend zone, it's like, I know you personally. I don't know your situation totally. Hey, give me some money. And it just doesn't sit right with me. But
yeah.
But then
when I lived in Knoxville, there was almost like no breweries.
Yeah, dude, it's crazy now. Yeah, and we're getting re-shut down Monday. Everything's shutting back down for until late August. But I don't know. Most everybody I've talked to has been okay. My day job is in the distribution side of beer, and we've been busier than ever because I deal with the grocery stores and the gas stations and stuff. And we've been I was talking to my boss about it a while ago. He said something along the lines of like, our department is up like 60% over last year, and like 40% over projection. So like we're just running around like crazy. But then all the on-premise guys, all our salesmen that normally sell to the bars and stuff, are struggling. So we'll figure it out. But I don't know, Sam.
Yeah.
I forgot what I was going to ask. I had something that I was going to bring up with Sam, but anyway. Continue. Go say what you're going to say, Seth.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I know a guy here, my buddy Ross owns The Well. He's got a location here and in Greenville, South Carolina. He actually specializes in getting beer outside of Asheville because that seems to be what everybody wants. So he has like 20 different taps and a lot of different cans. And for him, it was just like, man, I can't keep cans in stock.
Well, that's a secondary issue right now too. There's an aluminum shortage on top of everything else going on.
Yeah, so they were kind of, which I mean was good for him. He does have 20 taps, so he kind of just had to give away a lot of beer and sell, get rid of some growlers and whatnot before it all went bad. But other than that, I mean, it's been a good time for him. And again, he's found ways. He shut down half his parking lot, got picnic tables and umbrellas, and just like, if we have to be 6 feet apart, I need more room. So he's, it's like you said, he's innovated whatever he has to do to get in another step, because there's plenty of parking other than his little area. I think he wound up probably losing about 10 parking spots, but putting in like 8 picnic tables. And again, there's plenty of places to park in Asheville. So
Right.
It was a good situation for him in the long run.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, I know I was reading, it's like California, I think, somewhere in LA, they shut down an entire street that has a bunch of restaurants and stuff on it, so that all the restaurants on that street could build a patio out onto the actual road. So they shut it down to traffic, and now it's like a walking mall of restaurant, like it's a food court essentially, but it's all picnic tables and stuff outside. It's gonna be real interesting. Well, I guess not for California, but for you and Asheville, it'll be real interesting how this functions in December and January. But hopefully, we'll be further along with this by then.
Alcohol warms you up.
Yeah, but not for too long if it's 30 degrees outside.
Yeah, the other thing I was going to bring up, we were talking about the guy hacking Twitter. This was just random because I happened to talk to my wife about it the other night because she wasn't familiar with it. But I brought up like the big hacking in like Chicago in '87, the old Max Headroom thing in Chicago.
I don't recall. Tell the story.
I'm not familiar with it.
Oh yeah, it's just like it was like November of '87. It's like the one thing, like, this guy's never been caught. He like wore this Max Headroom mask on. There was like WGN was doing a show, and yeah, there was 2 separate hacks on the same day. I mean, yeah, check it out. It's just one of those situations where it's like, man, all these years later, he's never been caught. Usually somebody by that time is going to let something slip. But no, man, he did a 25-second hack during a sports segment on WGN around 9 p.m. And then the second one occurred 2 hours later for 90 seconds on their PBS affiliate during an episode of Doctor Who, which obviously Doctor Who's been going on forever.
Right.
But yeah, check that out, because like the culprits have never been caught, never been identified. So it's just one of those weird situations where it's like, man, I can't believe after all these years, nobody's ever slipped up and let it out.
Right. It's on the level of the Zodiac Killer, because it's not, what's his name? The Ted Cruz. You guys remember that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. All right. I was trying to, I was concerned for a second that I misremembered the Ted Cruz part, but, yeah, we've been really, I mean, I personally have been real fortunate in the situation. I've gotten to work through this whole thing. I'm actually kind of jealous of everybody that got laid off, but
yeah, wasn't that great?
Well, it's different in everywhere. I mean, I actually left the restaurant industry back in January, and then started a new job at the end of the January, and we were in the like tourist business, and then that got shut down. And then I was actually driving to Sevierville, Tennessee to work. And although I live in North Carolina and Tennessee's unemployment is very different. So my unemployment was only 10 weeks. So I only got that extra benefit. I had like a $3,500 cap. They were pulling from when I worked for Darden. So 10 weeks, $350 plus the extra 600, which was nice for that time, which was about my old salary. But then after 10 weeks, it was done. Like, there was no 600, there was nothing in North Carolina. So while everybody was still getting that until, pretty much yesterday, mine ran out long ago during that situation. So it was, like, I'm not out here like toting a salary or something, but like I feel like I was one of the rare people where like it was equal to or close to what I was already making. So it wasn't like I was living this fruitful life or anything, not working. But I didn't know North Carolina only lasted 10 weeks. And everybody else was like, yeah, Tennessee's like 25 weeks or 26 weeks. I'm like, well, shit, that must be nice.
Yeah, well, yeah, you're right, because it shut down today, I guess, until the new one passes, which sounds likely as far as I've followed it so far. It's all a fight over, like right now, the big fight is how much bonus military spending is getting attached to this second CARES Act, essentially. That's what the last I heard on it was that the Democrats are like, well, you just passed a $740 billion defense spending budget, and now you're going to add a couple more $100 billion to this relief effort
Yeah, so
2 weeks later or whatever.
a lot of
Earmarks.
the, I think it was like 600 billion or something's going to like some fighter jets or something.
Yeah. It's
Which
like-
for me, like if you're gonna, I mean, if we want to get political, as you said, it usually gets to it. For me, if you're gonna like take 600 billion, how about we just like divide that among the troops, not
Yeah.
a fighter jet. We send them over there. We don't do a whole lot of shit for them when they get back. So I
Put it in
would
the
much
VA.
rather I would much rather see it go to the VA or the troops than some fighter jets that sometimes just sit in hangars forever and never do anything. So
yeah, well,
that's just how I feel about it. I think it's just like, can't we just have a pandemic bill focused on the pandemic? Like,
Right.
and then in the midst of this too, let's also double tax deductions for business lunches because that's really important with everything going on. You shouldn't even be having business lunches right now.
well, you should, because you should. The more you do that, the more the little guy that works at the restaurant can get some. It's just a
Yeah.
way to pass it down to the little guy.
Well, I'm not trying to like shit on the military. I think it was in the past year there was a training exercise. It was like a brand new F-22 or F whatever that crashed in the mountains between Tennessee and North Carolina.
Yeah,
I think so.
you mentioned that before. I need to look that story up because I'm curious about it because you've mentioned it a couple times now. But
I want to say they were just out on a training exercise and something happened and wrecked or crashed.
well, I mean, our big things
But
become
it was like a $22 million plane or something ridiculous like that.
yeah.
It's just it seems like it would be. Now, granted, we're normal people sitting here talking about it. We don't know all the ins and outs that go in.
How dare you? My mom says I'm special.
Yeah, mom's been telling me that for 32 years as well. But
Oh, mom
But-
never told me that.
but it seems like it would be, hey, let's just focus this on what helps America right now. I mean, our defense budget's already us and like the next 10 countries combined, which are all our allies.
Yep.
So I just don't understand the. I mean, everybody has to pick this side. It has to be left and right, and right's trying to do this, left is trying to do this. How about we just help the people? Who gives a shit if they're left, right, blue, red? Like, just help the people that mortgages aren't getting pushed back. Plenty of people are probably going to be evicted this month or next month.
Right. Well, I mean, I think that's one of the ones that's going to get pushed through to continued. Which I mean, again, I got as a, I get it on both sides. I mean, does the landlord who is paying the mortgage on the house he has to furlough the rent, and so then he gets to furlough his mortgage, and then it comes a game of when this does settle, it's going to come back. It's not like you're going to not owe it. And so it's going to be interesting as that settles down. But like a big thing for us and what we've been pushing on in the show is the local version. And one of the things that Sam and I were talking about last week, because everybody else is out, is I don't know what is North Carolina's main income tax wise? Like, do you guys have like Tennessee is a sales tax state. We have property tax and we have sales tax. We don't have an income tax. Does North Carolina have an income tax?
Yeah, so I have to pay an extra 5% state tax is what I have to pay.
Okay.
So, and funny, me working in Tennessee, because I lay my head in North Carolina, I have to pay 5% on that income at the end of the year. So I need to save 5% of the income that I make in Tennessee because that's going to hit me at the end of the year.
Okay, I see. But you don't. But then the inverse of that would be you're not spending the majority of your income in the state of Tennessee, so that
Correct.
well, what's your sales tax there? Do you know?
I want to say it's 5.5.
Okay, so you're
I
total.
got Google right here, so I'll tell you.
Oh, it's fine. It's close enough. I mean, one of the things that the reason the reason I bring it up is that with like for here in Knoxville, I was looking at it and we were talking about it before, is that we're 9.25% sales tax.
Yeah.
But 6 of that is state, 3.25% of that is either county or city, depending on where you buy your thing. If you buy in the city, it goes to the city. If you buy in the county, it goes to the county. And then both of that 3.25% on both city and county, about 2 of that, a little over 2 of that goes directly to the school board, completely separately from everything else. And so One of the big things I have issue with, because we're talking about buying gajillion-dollar fighter jets and shit instead of actually helping people, it's like, well, the majority of your income that is taken in taxes goes federal, then goes state, then goes local. And that's just, at least that's how it is for us here in Tennessee. I'm assuming that's the same for you, because, or at least it's probably split, because if you have 5% sales tax, that's probably your local, mostly your local. And then that 5% state is, that's 5% state income is the state's collection.
Yeah, it's a county and local taxes in most areas bring the sales tax rate to 6.75 to 7, and some can be as high as 7.5.
On top of a 5%, wow. You should move back to Knoxville, buddy. That's a lot of money.
I'm looking at moving back to Cookeville, in the process.
We're looking at buying some land in Cookeville, but that's a separate conversation.
Yeah.
I'm assuming some of those higher sales taxes are probably the resort on the coast. You know, all the touristy areas. They probably have like Sevierville does with the whatever the hell they call it, tourism tax,
tourism
whatever.
tax, yeah. They're,
Which probably, I mean, I live in Asheville, so I'm probably getting a lot of that as well.
yeah, I mean, Asheville is a cool place to go visit and not live in. But
Yeah.
so anyway, my point being in all that is that one of the things that I've coming to realize as we're digging into this is that as much as policy is local important, it confuses me that the money isn't the same conversation. The money's backwards. Because at the end of the day, our argument as a whole in the show is that because we've got Mayor Kane in Knox County right now, Mayor Glenn Jacobs, formerly known as the wrestling great Kane, you know, and when we start arguing local politics, it's I think one of the reasons that the value is less as for the citizenry to care about local politics is because that's where the least amount of their money goes in taxes. I don't know how many people think about it that deeply, and maybe I'm overthinking how people think, but that's one of the things that I'm trying to understand why the three of us in this room, in this virtual room, you know, can more easily discuss what Pelosi and Trump did this week than we can what Mayor Jacobs did for us. And I don't even know who the mayor of Asheville is, but you know, and how those things affect it. And one thing I found when we were traveling through the state of North Carolina, I thought North Carolina was a much more pot-friendly state than it is. Apparently, according to some stoner magazine website, that North Carolina is one of the worst places to be a stoner in.
Yeah. So you have like Asheville, that's this like separate entity of North Carolina. And then outside of that, man, it's still pretty much like a very strong Republican state, and it has been for a while. So like Asheville's this hub, and then outside of that, it's very much, you know, there's not a lot going on.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you have your big city like Charlotte, places like that, but yeah, Asheville's like this whole separate hub of what the rest of the state typically represents.
Yeah, I think I mentioned it a couple times on the podcast how they saw something in the news. They had a special marathon race in Asheville just trying to point out the crazy district lines that got drawn just because Asheville is its own kind of like little, you know, typically blue section. But it was just like a crazy gerrymandered section of Asheville to kind of cut out all, I guess, the rural areas all around it.
To try to turn those districts red.
Well,
Yeah,
to keep them red, essentially.
Right. Yeah, that's one of the things that I'm excited about. We have a goal to get. We haven't started the process yet because there's probably too much going on. But I want to get an election commissioner in to visit on the show and talk to them about like how all that works. Like, because one of the things to us, you know, is we don't know. Like, I don't know how this thing works. Like, I'm so far out of civics class that trying to remember, like, you know, and how accurate the civics class was when in high school or whatever. Anyway, probably is another question to talk about. But, you know, I don't remember how all this stuff, you know, at least was taught to me. And the more I'm digging into it, the more I'm confident that I am seeing as I'm learning more about it is not what we were taught when we were in school. And so it's frustrating. Like, it's frustratingly weird. Like, I've talked to candidates about, like, why is this district drawn this way? And they're like, I don't know. You know, like, we're coming up. We have Thursday, August 6th, we have a big election coming up. A bunch of primaries, and then we have a bunch of county general stuff that's going on. And it's a Thursday. I don't know in my life, obviously this happens regularly here in Knoxville, but I don't know in my life if I've ever paid attention to an election that wasn't on a Tuesday.
Well, it's just why are I mean, and this is for general, I mean, and I could be straying here, but it's like, why is our voting system so outdated? Why is it so hard to vote? Why is there clear voter suppression in some areas? And people are like, that's not what's going on. No, it's like, it's clearly going on. Like, don't ignore it. It's just, why is the system so difficult? Like, why is it so hard to understand? And that's kind of maybe what you're talking about, but it's like, it should be much more simpler. The whole two-party system's bogus. I mean,
Preach, son, preach it.
yeah, I mean, it's just, look how big and diverse a simple town like Knoxville or Asheville is, and you think you're going to fit everybody into two buckets, and it doesn't make any sense. Where somehow we have these rules that were written hundreds of years ago, and it's like, well, they're not supposed to change.
Right.
Well,
that's
right. That's all the time.
That's one of the top things on my list of things to ask the election commissioner. It's like, because I consider myself a libertarian. I argue as a libertarian most of the time when we get into politics stuff. And, in Knox County, at least, you can register as a Republican, as an independent, or as a Democrat. And if I register as an independent, I'm literally handicapping what I can do inside Knox County voting.
Absolutely.
Because I can't. If I was registered, I'm registered as a Republican, because I registered as a Republican when I was 18. And I haven't gotten around to changing it, and at this point, I don't want to. But because coming up Monday, I have 4 people coming on throughout the day Monday to do interviews with that are Democratic nominees that are in a primary for their seats. None of them I can vote for their primary part. I think only 2 of the 4 I would be able to vote for because they're in my district, but that's a separate conversation. But it's like I don't like. I've had multiple Republicans running for the same seat that I've talked to for their primary, but I only get to vote for a portion of them. And I get the base idea of, well, if you're a Democrat, you're not allowed to vote in a Republican primary because you're going to throw it on purpose. But at the same time, I'm an independent. I should get both ballots, not neither.
Yeah,
and the way the system works now is neither. And that, I mean, it's because I'm trying to narrow down the field to my 2 best options, and then I can choose from the 2. But I can only choose one subset of options, and then I get to choose the best of the 2 because I am too lazy to change to an independent, and I want to have at least half impact, and I can't have full impact.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not locked into, like, I know some people that I have a conversation with, they lock into one thing. Like, we won't deep dive in it, but I always take abortion, for example. Like, they look at abortion and it's like, okay, I'm not voting this way simply on that one issue.
Right. And, well, that's they call those single issue voters. And there's a number of factors there's a number of issues that some people identify as single issue voters, and abortion is a big one for a lot of people. That is a single issue. I don't care about anything else. They could be the worst human being on the planet, but as long as they agree with me on this one issue, that's who I'm voting for.
Yeah, and that blows my mind. For me, it's just like, I just want to take off the blue, the red, whatever color, and just listen and vote for the person that you think is doing or saying the best for you. And one of the things I read one time that really stuck with me is like, think about the person that that's probably needs the most help, and maybe vote for that person that's going to help them out the most. It's like, you know what? That's probably a pretty decent theory. Because then I'm not at least a piece of shit. I'm thinking about the little guy. But it's just like, man, I can't argue. I can't talk to people that's like single issue. It's like, Jesus Christ, open up your mind, man. I need you to have like some sort of conversation with me and not lock in.
Right, because it doesn't matter how well you logically beat them on anything else. That one thing is the pun intended trump card.
Yeah, because I'll talk, like when I talk to people about abortion, I usually bring up gun control, and I'm like, what is your argument against gun control? Is that, well, criminals are always going to find a way to get guns. Okay, well, people are always going to find a way to get abortions. It's the same damn thing.
Right.
But I'd rather them do it in a safe manner. When we have states that still allow the rapist to have rights to as a father, then don't talk to me about abortion. That's ridiculous. Like that, I think it's like Alabama and one other state that's like, if the woman gets raped and has the baby, the rapist has like father rights or some like garbage. And I'm like, what? Like what?
All right. So to devil's advocate on that for a second, is the assumption is that it's part of the punitive damages of of being a rapist is saying if you get somebody pregnant, then you're gonna have to pay child support for the rest of your life. Do you think that's
Yeah, but I think there's like a visitation rights thing in there.
that's fucked up?
Yeah, exactly. Like, and
You know, I guess it would kind of tie into it's like, well, if I'm paying their schooling, paying their health care, then I should have a decision over other things.
yeah, and so for me, it's one of those situations where, like, if a woman was in that situation, God forbid, you know, I know it happens. God forbid, it happens less and less every day. Um, and if that woman doesn't want to have that child because it's going to remind her of that moment every day, then I'm perfectly okay with that. Like, I'm not for it in all situations, but like in a situation like that, it's just like, man, if the woman doesn't
Right,
want to
and
relive that,
right, and not only that, but in certain states, she actually has to at least hand that thing that was terrible. Hand that child over to that monster that did that thing
yeah. So it's
to further remind her of that was a real person and a real event, and that real monster person has influence over the child that hopefully loves and takes care of and stuff like that. But God, that is gross.
on top of that, we have a room full of men making these decisions, which doesn't make any sense. So, like, let's say this. Okay, well, you're a rapist. You have to get a vasectomy. I bet there would be a lot of men throwing shit at the fucking wall, pissed off about that.
Well, see, I don't know. I mean, that's kind of, that kind of, again, devil's advocate on it. That kind of gives them, that gives them the gun with blanks, so they're not.
That's true.
They're not going to kill anybody.
It's a terrible situation that I can't stand people that get locked in on that one issue. Because this has came up a lot during COVID, and it's like, well, nobody's mad about these abortions. It's like, man, like, issues don't have to be tied or connected to each other. Like, if you're like,
this
it's like
this for you, Seth.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
I'm actually drinking a bottle of red wine. While you haven't heard any crack open over here. Me, who also, I don't know if you listen to my entrepreneur podcast, but I also do I had a health and fitness guy on there, and red wine is a little bit lower calorie intake than the double and triple IPAs that I like to drink.
Yeah, I know. That's my thing too. I just got back from vacation and I've been enjoying many beers, and it's diet time come Monday.
Yeah, so since I've had some glasses of wine, we've had some beers. If we want to go down the political road, I'm open to it at this point. I've already, if I've talked about abortion, I'm obviously
willing to talk some politics shit. But no, I mean, I think your main point in all that, and using the example of abortion or whatever, is that there's this camp rule, the tribalism that is who we are as people, and it's going to be there at some levels anyway. But that we have these two giant tribes that are so descriptive or representative of most of the contents of their tribe, but we're so stuck on this tribalism ideal that we go hard at it because we're in the tribe. And it's like, well, let's have a little more. I mean, one thing to me is like, I think tribalism is a real thing for sure, and I think there's a naturalness to it that we're gonna do. But I think the two parties make it so all encompassing of everything that you have to get behind, even if you don't necessarily believe it, because you want to stay in the tribe. Like, what was it? I think it was one of the younger books. He was talking about how the reason that we are generally afraid of public speaking as human beings. Does anybody know what I'm talking about?
About Carl Jung?
Yeah.
Okay.
Young? Is it not Younger?
No, it's just Jung. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Anyway, it might not be one of his, but anyway, it's essentially it's when you were speaking in front of a group in like real tribal days, it was usually because you were begging them not to kick you out. There were not many times where you had an audience in what we would consider nowadays as a good thing, but back in like historically, to be in front of a crowd is you were begging the crowd to not kick you out of it. And so that's his theory on like why public speaking is such a big issue. I think tribalism is natural, is part of the point of what I'm getting at here. But I think that we've, again, with the red and blue, we've made these two massive tribes that nobody very few people fully fit into the entirety of the tribe. And
People want to feel like they fit in somewhere.
right,
They don't want to. Nobody really wants to be an outlier or
right,
feel like an outsider.
right. And I think like exactly, it's natural. And I think that if we had more tribes to kind of bounce off of, there would be more specificity to the tribe you're in, so it's more encompassing of actual thoughts and ideals and what you feel about most of the different issues that come up in these tribalism fights. And then we'd have a little bit more balance between, instead of just these two juggernauts of immovable force that nothing does anything because they're too busy. Just, I mean, AC on the show, for your historical context, Seth, AC on the show had a really great point a couple weeks ago. He said there's a reason why we are stuck in the binary. There's the Democrats and Republicans, and then there's a right and a wrong. And like, that's the thing, is that if you're a Republican, the Democrats are wrong. If you're a Democrat, the Republicans are wrong, and so forth. And that's that tribalism ideal. And I think it would change a little bit if there were more tribes to fight with. That's my point.
Yeah, and I mean, this is, and I grew up in a small town. I mean, I lived in Cookeville a long time, but 20 minutes north of that, I grew up in Livingston, very small town. I graduated with like 120 kids in high school. And it's just, I know how those people think. And you've probably heard him, Trey Crowder, the liberal redneck.
Yep.
So he grew up in Clay County, even smaller than where I grew up, about another 20 minutes away from Livingston. And he kind of he doesn't bash his people a lot. He just doesn't, he grew up there, and he's moved away, and he looks back and he's like, how the hell did we fall for all this shit?
Right.
And he's asking them the same thing. And it's like, they still don't grasp the concept of it. So it's just one of those things. It's like, man, trying to tie people into two groups, like take my 115 person high school class. You can't put all those people in two groups. So why the hell are we trying to put the whole country in two groups? And then, correct me if I'm wrong, in the situation of the Electoral College, 51% people in Tennessee vote red, 49% vote blue. All the votes go red, correct?
Correct. Yes, correct.
How the hell does that make sense?
Right. Right. And I don't know, like, see, that one I get stuck on, and there's logic behind the Electoral College, in the sense that there is, for, Tennessee or North Carolina for that matter, to actually have some power and influence on the system as a whole. We've got to have a system in place like that, because it's, how many Tennessees and North Carolinas does it take to battle a California and New York?
Right.
And so and I don't know what the right answer is. I don't know that a full on popular vote is the right answer either. But yeah, I'm not sure. I'm truly not sure how that should.
I'm one of those people where, if the system's already broke, you might as well try something else to see if it's broke too, or if it's better. I'm a big advocate for universal health care, and I'm like, well, our system's already broke. We might as well try it. And maybe you don't agree, maybe you don't like it, but it's like, our system now doesn't work.
See, I agree. I agree. I agree with the end part of that statement, but my beginning part of my let's try something different goes the complete opposite way. I'm a free market guy. I want to see hospitals fight like Cheddar's and O'Charlie's do.
Yeah, which would be great,
because
if we could get the big market out of it.
Well, I mean, and this is something that Sam and I have been. This is something that I've been wanting to have a much broader discussion with our whole team on, and that this use of private companies is inaccurate, and because I don't think, like, big health and big pharma, they're not a group of private industries fighting each other like O'Charlie's and Cheddar's. So if we're going to stay on that example, that's not a free market fight like everybody, like most of us other players are playing down here on the small levels, and how to figure out how to fix that. Because like there is some level of natural collusion that happens. I mean, O'Charlie's and Cheddar's and Applebee's and those type of restaurants, they are going to find a happy number that they're going to put their chicken tender meals at, price wise, that isn't the lowest possible, because they all know that if they start playing the price game, nobody wins.
Okay.
Right.
I mean, that's natural for the system, but that is found naturally as opposed to unnaturally in how healthcare works. It's not the number that we settle on for how much a procedure costs in the different hospital networks is not settled on by the hospitals figuring out what the right number is to make what they need to stay open and pay the staff and all that kind of stuff and be a profitable place. It's settled on behind closed doors in conversations with government officials on how to set and regulate and do all these different other little things. And that's my big argument. And like, my big argument that I'm getting on is that we use this term private company a little too loosely, in my opinion. It's not incorrect in the strictest terms. You know, for us here in Knoxville, the Tennova Healthcare System, it's a private company. It's owned. There's a board of directors, and it's publicly traded, and it's owned by individuals and groups of individuals or whatever. That is true in the private sense, but they don't act like a private company does. Like, I mean, even like a McDonald's, the megalith that is McDonald's, they're fucking everywhere, but they don't get to bend rules. They don't get to the government doesn't bend rules for them, so that other restaurants can't play against them.
Yeah, I mean, there's several different systems like that. I think the one that, switching from healthcare and using the term private, like private prisons
Right.
are something that is strictly for profit, and that is pretty much ridiculous in my eyes. Very different.
I argue
from the
against this one too, but in a different conversation, and that's
Yeah.
fine. And no, I get it, but I get it because again, I think the term private is not accurate to what, at least maybe this is me overanalyzing what the word private means, but for me, a private industry doesn't get to negotiate with their customer, not on that level. They don't get to fix price with the customer, and so a private prison is sitting down with the state or local or even federal government, negotiating what they're going to, how they're going to get paid and all this different stuff. And then, because to me, the private prison, I have no issue with private prisons. I have issues with the way private prisons are incentivized. Because if the whole point, if the negotiation, right. The for profit's not a problem, but if the what gets, how you get paid is the problem. If I don't know, if Seth B. Inc. opens a private prison and I get to go sit down with Knox County and I say, I'll do it, but here's how you're going to pay me. You're going to pay me X number of dollars per person in the room or per person in the building. And they say okay to that. Well, then my incentive as a private company is going to have as many people in the room as I can. And that's a failure of that government for allowing that contract. Again, in my example, if Knox County agrees to that, they screwed up. It's not the private prison's fault. It's Knox County's fault because they're incentivizing the prison to keep people there and to get more people there and to keep them there as long as they can, because the more they have in there, the more they make their money. What Knox County should do in this example is they figure out a way to incentivize me to actually really rehabilitate people and get them back out and to be positive members of society afterwards, not just to keep them in a box.
So that I can 100% agree with.
And that's my problem is that, again, we say that's a private company and it's like, yes, it is, but their customer is the failure and their customer is the government.
Yeah.
And the government not negotiating a contract in their government and populace's best interest is the failure there. It's not the private industry there because they're acting like a private business should. They're doing what they can to make as much as they can possibly make out of a situation. And that is a normal private industry stance on doing business.
Yeah.
But you set it up with the customer being the local government or the federal government or whatever. You set it up with those government entities, and that the government entity gets to say they should be the one dictating the terms on how you get paid. And it should be for the benefit of who the government customer is, which is you and I, the citizen. But that's not that's not the relationship that's happening there. And that's why I get so persnickety, for lack of a better word, about the use of the word private prisons. It's like it is, yes, but it's not.
So if it's in a situation like you said, where it's like, hey, I'm going to do it in a rehabilitation factor because that's how it should be in my eyes, then I'm 100% on board with that. And the way you said it, it's the employer, the government who's paying them that's the problem. And I kind of look at that, not to continue to switch gears, but I always bring that up with illegal immigrants. I'm like, you're mad at that person, but you're not mad at the person hiring them to do their business. and you should be mad at the person hiring them.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
So I agree. Like,
But again, there's a second factor in that one. If I'm going to pick apart everything, I guess.
that's fine.
But there's a second factor in that one too, is that you and I, as Americans, are too proud to do the job.
Oh, I'm not going to you're not going to get me to disagree there.
And so, and again, there is a problem with the employer who is trying to underpay, but there's a problem with the system at large where the job's not worth it. And this is where I go into the I don't like the minimum wage rules, is that there are jobs that aren't worth minimum wage. They're just not.
Yeah.
So if I can't even,
especially you've worked in restaurants, I've worked in restaurants. Sometimes just putting up with the general public isn't worth minimum wage.
well, I mean the other way. There's some jobs that aren't worth minimum wage in the negative, not in the. They should be worth more than that.
It's both ways sometimes.
Right, I agree with you. I fully agree with you. But I mean, it's like you got like so to kind of run an example is like tomatoes or whatever. Tomatoes don't sell for $4 or $5 a pound. They just don't. They're not going to sell. We as the buying public aren't going to buy them. So I can't pay even minimum wage to pick tomatoes. So I'm breaking the law one way or the other. I'm either breaking the law because I'm not paying American citizens minimum wage, and then since they're American citizens, they have the ability to start working for me and then sue me for not paying them enough and all that kind of stuff. Or I break the law by hiring an illegal immigrant. Again, in a basic, just reasonable business model, it's like I cannot pay minimum wage for this task. I'm going to break the law one way or the other to perform the task. Not okay on the grand scheme of things. I agree. It's not a good way to go about things, but it's the necessity of the market. Well, I'm going to break the law on the illegal immigrant side because at least I'm not going to get sued for underpaying them. Where if I hire Americans and underpay them, they're going to sue me at some point. So there's logic to it. It is I guess what I'm getting at. But I don't know the where do we switch to minimum wage? I had something else on the front end of that and I forgot.
Who knows? We're shifting gears.
That's what we do.
That's perfectly fine.
Circle back.
Go ahead.
Circle back to what?
No, I was joking. I was like, let's circle back to football.
Well, there's 11 guys and they square off. And the goal is to get the ball on one end or the other end.
So it's just all about scoring.
Yeah, it's all about scoring. And again,
that's the whole point.
It's the incentive. It's the incentive of the game. That's the incentive in place is to score the points because you score the most points, you win the game, and that's how the incentives are set up. And so teams, do everything they can to figure out how to score the most points.
I know it wouldn't work perfectly. Maybe with the tomato thing. I mean, if it costs that much to pick it, why not raise the cost? And that's what the market price is.
You're correct. But at some point it will level out. And when it levels out, in however it levels out, most likely in the scenario is if you start pricing it to what it costs to produce it legally, for lack of a better word, your field size is going to have to shrink, and your total production is going to come down, and then you get into weird bulk issues and whether you can keep the bulk discount available, and then it might go up a little further after that. So it'll level out higher than the straight math will say, because the demand will drop because of the price. And so since demand drops because of the price, it's going to then cost a little bit more to produce what will actually meet the real demand. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so like field size and availability and stuff like that will change drastically. And it might not be the wrong move. I'm not saying it's the wrong move. I'm just saying
there'd be no way to get all companies to agree to do that. The other companies are like, no, I'm going to make a shit ton of money.
Well,
sure, raise the price. I'll keep growing my $2 tomatoes and selling them for 20.
Yeah.
Please and thank you for jacking up the price.
Right. There will be some. I don't know, but how do you get away? This is all assuming that we could somehow police the system correctly. You're not going to get it done naturally. It would have to take it would have to take some sort of real immigration fix where we don't have enough of an illegal population to do the job, which I don't know how that's going to ever work because the wall ain't going to do it.
No, a wall ain't gonna do
Well, I
it.
mean, we actively encouraged it, 30, 40 years ago?
Yeah, we did. And I mean, again, it goes like this goes back to like episode like 4. It goes back a long time ago. And actually, I don't even think we did it on the episode. I think AC brought it up in post show. It's like, we did this 50 years ago. Like we lived on what we made kind of thing 50 years ago. Why aren't we there anymore? And I think like the
Most
whole,
of us are lazy.
that's not just most of us are lazy. I mean, globalization happened,
Yeah.
50, 75 years ago. It's weird to say 50 years ago was not much before I was born.
No,
But 50,
it's getting shorter every year.
I know, but 50, 75 years ago, it wasn't a viable option to make it somewhere else.
Right.
And so realistically what happened, in my opinion at least, is delicious beer. Thank you. American production at its finest. Sorry. What happened is that it became a real thing. Like imports used to be special, and then they stopped being special because the ability to get it here and the cost associated with getting it here wasn't as much. That it was like, I bought an import car in 1950. Like you buy like a Land Rover, like an old 50s, 60s, early 60s Land Rover or something like that. That was a big fucking deal if you had that in the States. It's like, what's that Honda that's been banned in the US forever? It's like super popular with like drift kids and shit like that. Anybody?
No.
There's some Honda that came out in like the 80s, and they had an American version of it for a couple years, and then they took it off the market. And they're I think it's a Supra LX, it's some special Supra. Anyway,
Skyline maybe? Nissan?
Yeah, maybe that's it. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Took it off the market, and since it wasn't available here, the price jacked up for the ones that were here. People that had the ability to import it. It's like that stupid job that I had for a little while. I don't know if this is after you moved, Seth, or it's after I left the bar. For a little while, I was buying cars to get sold in China and stuff like that. I had this little scam thing because apparently, like, Mercedes doesn't like the Asian market, so they don't send a lot of cars to China. And so as a result, there's high demand for like the high-end Mercedes SUVs and shit like that. And so like states dealers, like U.S.
So you were
dealerships,
like Memphis Reigns.
do what?
So you were like Memphis Reigns and got him 60
A little bit,
seconds.
yeah. Except I was getting new stuff, not old classic used stuff. But so essentially, like there's kind of a thing in place where, like Mercedes on their U.S. dealerships, they're like, you cannot sell these to be shipped to China. And so there's companies in the U.S. that hire people to go buy cars, and then they buy the car from them, and then they ship it to China because there's enough money in those cars to do this whole complicated thing and make money on it because it's not available there, and the people that have the money for it are like, I want it, I don't care how much it costs, kind of shit. And so I went through this whole kind of this thing. Going back to the main point though, is that it's like the whole premise of import isn't special anymore. I mean, really, like what do you buy imported that you're excited about, that you're paying a premium for anymore? Cheese?
Beer?
Well, I mean,
Beer?
like who
Yeah.
even looks anymore? Just about. I mean, it's just like I want it, I buy it. You know.
Right, but I'm just saying, like Sam said, like import beer. You have special
Yeah.
import beer that's special, and you're willing to pay a premium for it. But like import cars, no, I buy most import cars. We buy them because they're cheaper, not because they're better actually, usually functionally. But we buy them for economics more than we buy them for quality. But it's kind of a combination of the two. What else? I mean, I'm trying to think though. Like realistically, like what's an important import thing that people really, really, really want? It's not that it's cheap more than it is special anymore. And so, whenever that shift happened, that whether it was opening of trade relations, whether it's how much cheaper logistics got in the long term as far as shipping things here and there and stuff like that, I think that's the big shift in the U.S. economy and why we no longer can make the things that we need anymore. Because when we do make them, we price ourselves out of the market, or we quality ourselves out of the market. Like U.S. made versions of Japanese made things don't compare either their quality similar, but the U.S. version is way more expensive, or they're priced the same, but the U.S. quality is way down. And that shift to me is what the big issue. And I don't know how we fix that. I'd be open to ideas, but I don't know how we fix that. But I think that's the reality. That's the main thing I think that is I mean, especially right now in the COVID thing, like we had all this mask craziness and all this different stuff. And it's like part of the problem we had a big mask issue in the front end of it was trying to stop giving them to us. Not giving them to us, but stop selling them to us because they're like, well, we're going to hold on to these because we need them for a little bit. And then production caught up and stuff like that. And then they started shipping them back over here. And then we're all making our own and blah, 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 blah. But that's how we got where we are. And it's like, why can't we make those things here and price like the same? We can't. We just can't. And I don't know how to fix that. And that's what frustrates the crap out of me on this conversation.
We can. We just can't do it as cheaply as we're willing to let them do it. Because I think there was a guy that testified before Congress, and he estimated that 50% of our, prior to COVID, hospitals were buying about 50% of their masks from China, and the other half was Mexico. I mean, two places where we still get, a lot of our cheapest goods.
Right. But that guy was the guy that is a manufacturer of them here in the States. And
no, this is a different guy.
Okay, but isn't that same set of testimony, right?
Yeah.
Okay, but his company can't compete price-wise. Or there's some weird contract in place. That was the conversation that we had previously on it.
Yeah, I think so.
Because because the ones they're getting from Mexico are cheaper than the ones that this other guy's company makes, and the hospitals need to try to trim costs because they're in the game of making money too. There's a better value for them to buy the imported version because it's cheaper. And I don't know how to fix that. I mean, if we drop tariffs on it and make it super expensive to import things in the United States. But for you,
I mean, from the hospital standpoint, I mean, their financial guy, the CFO, I mean, they're trying to keep their costs down as much as possible. And if that's an option, I mean, logically, right, that's what they're going to go with.
And I'm agreeing with that because at the end of the day, right, for me and you, the end user of whatever the product or service is, the hospital for this example, the better the CFO, the better the finances are in the hospital, at least normal speak, it should be the better it is for you and I as the consumer in paying for it, because they're
also playing the risk reward game of, generally you're buying the stuff from overseas. I mean, just like you buy stuff off Amazon that comes from China. I mean, that's generally some pretty cheap ass shit. Super generically made and may or may not be up to standard.
Well, it depends what the standard is, but yeah, you're right. But again, it is in some attempt. I don't know if the mask is the best example, but it's in some attempt to keep the cost for me and you, the consumer.
No, the mask is a great example because a lot of the masks that we're getting from China of all these random companies popping up trying to make a buck, we're sending very much subpar masks.
Okay, but I'm just saying it's the idea of the hospital side of it, at least, is trying to save cost so that you and I as the end user don't have to pay as much. That would be my assumption, at least. It may be inaccurate.
And your assumption that the hospitals would charge more because their operating costs are higher?
I would think so. I mean, that's how again, on this whole private, non-private, semi-private conversation of business, a normal business would do so. That would be their intent. Unless they're in a specialty industry where whatever it is that they do a special version of that thing that the consumer is willing to pay more for. But at the end of the day, walking into a room to get my temperature taken, I don't care if as long as the mask does what it's supposed to do. And I'm not going to go into that side of the cheap bullshit mask getting bought. But if the mask is there and it's doing what it's supposed to do, I would prefer that the hospital paid $1 for it than $5 for it, because I would assume that $1 and $5 difference is going to come out, at least as a percentage, in the bill at the end of the day. Now it's a hospital and it's insurance and all that kind of shit, so that's a whole different specifics conversation. But the idea of a normal restaurant or a more normal style business, the point is, the reason I pay less for it is so that I can sell it for less or have a better margin on it to sell it for the same. That's the point.
Right.
And so the logic makes sense. I don't know how to fix it, I guess, is what I'm going back to again.
Well, we were talking about imports, so I'm going to get I'm just going to give you something straight from North Carolina.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
If after wine, buddy, you're gonna get fat.
No, man, I only had one left. I was like, what better time to do it? I had one little graham cracker nut brown left from
Ooh,
North Carolina, so
that sounds
figured
good.
I mean, you could say the name. We don't know anything, so I think technically we were.
It's the first time I've had anything from it's Satula Mountain Brewing
Mhm.
in Highlands, North Carolina.
So it's right there.
Little sweet on the front end, and then finishes with that little nice smooth brown, typical brown ale finish on the back end.
You're marking up Sam Street right now. I was driving through. I drove back from Folly Beach today, and I was driving through there, and it bums me out that there's a big sign on the side of the road for the Sierra Nevada Brewery.
Oh man, what's up with them?
It was a big sign. No, it was like a big sign on the side of the road with like brewery tours and like the brown signs on the interstate for like attractions.
Oh yeah.
It's like if you're gonna do it in Asheville, there's Asheville breweries instead of a California import.
Well, the only thing I'll say, have you been to that brewery?
I have not.
Okay, so the only thing I'll say about it is, man, it's like the Biltmore of breweries.
It's right there near Biltmore, so I mean.
No, it's actually close to the airport. It's about 20, 30 minutes away. So
Okay, let's clarify something real quick. All of Asheville is near Biltmore to me, so.
yeah,
That's what I was about to say. I was like, just that's close.
yeah, it's still like 20, 30 minutes away. Where for me, Biltmore's like 7 minutes away.
I was driving up. I was driving up what 26 or whatever.
Which,
And-
depending on what time of day you hit 26, it could be an hour away.
Well, I was driving up 26 or whatever, and like the first like real Asheville stop is like the Biltmore Estates or whatever. It's the movie theater and shit right there.
Yeah.
And then not that much past that is when I saw the signs for the Sierra Nevada exit. So I don't know how far off the exit it is, but
So it should have been before Biltmore, the Biltmore movie theater. It actually should have been like 4 or 5 exits back. So that's kind of weird.
maybe I was. I was driving back too. I was driving from South Carolina.
Yeah. So it still should have been.
Am I upside down? I don't remember.
Yeah. But yeah,
Maybe.
seriously, that brewery, like I said, I'm not a huge fan of most of their beers, but that facility itself, like cobblestone road and parking lot, pristine. I'm talking clean to the T, beautiful outside. It's just something to go see because of how nice of a brewery it is. But again, like if you're going for a great beer, that's not on the list of choices for me.
Well, like Highwire's got a tap room here, and it's in a
Yeah.
weird spot. We've been fighting with the landlord that owns that building because we're trying to get in there, and they don't want our business in their building.
Burial would probably be my number one location in Asheville. If you just want multiple good beers on tap at all times, Burial's going to be your number one spot.
I thought Wicked Weed's location was great. Their tap room right there in the middle of downtown.
Yeah, it's a great area. A lot of people are pissed at them because they sold out to Budweiser. I'm like, they're making the same beer they were making before. They probably have a little bit more creative freedom now that they have somebody like Budweiser backing them. And then actually, the production facility is about 4 minutes away from my house, and they opened the tap room there, so you can sit in the tap room and watch like the canning production and all that stuff going on, which is pretty wild to see on a mass scale. And it's just like, man, like why be mad at them? They're still making great beer. They really helped put Asheville on the map from a brewery standpoint.
Right.
So I have no problems with Wicked Weed, except for I just don't go there a lot because it's so busy.
Right. Well, we were talking about the independent brewery logo a couple weeks ago. There's the Independent Brewers Association or whatever, and when you're a member, you get the logo, and Wicked Weed still gets to carry the logo, which I think is kind of weird.
Really?
Yeah. Last time I looked, it's been a while since I looked. I don't work with them here as far as my day job or whatever, so I don't pay that much attention to their stuff. But last time I looked at it, because I was thinking about it, because I'd heard the story about them InBev buying them or whatever, and so
So now are a lot of the breweries in Knoxville canning or no?
no, two.
I didn't think so.
Well, there's a third now. There's a guy, I don't know who it is. I don't know if he's local or not, but there's a guy who has a truck with a canner on it.
What?
Like he's got a semi truck with a canning system in it, and so he'll go pull up to breweries. Genius idea. I wish I would have come up with it 5 years ago. But he'll go up to like these small breweries and basically park for the day, and they run their beer through the system and comes out with their cans on the other side.
So
But
Balter Brew Works is about the only one I've been to
which one
since I've Balter.
is Balter still around, Sam?
No, I've heard of it. I can't even picture where it's at right now.
Yeah.
Close
Oh,
to
hey,
the
it's right there on the corner.
Millie
Yeah,
Mile.
yeah, I
was
think
in
it is
for a
there.
concert.
Yeah, no, there's I mean, as far as strong brands go, that you might have seen, Schultzbrow started canning. That as far as the coolest brewery to go to, I think Schultzbrow kind of wins that one. It's a castle in the middle of what used to be a pretty rough end of the north downtown area, but it's a fucking castle. Like it's a legitimate castle sitting out, and like the inside of the castle, they've got this really great glass wall, and you can see all the brewery systems and stuff in there, and then it's the tap room, and then they have probably the best beer garden in Knoxville. I don't know, Sam, got one better?
Yeah, somebody was talking about it yesterday. No, that's the one I was just thinking. I was like, oh shit, I need to go there before they close the bars back down.
Yeah, Schultzbrau's it's a very cool spot. And this guy, they apparently they opened their first one in like Louisville or Lexington. And I don't know if they sold it or if it's just runs automatically now, and they went and brought it down here, and it's a different theme and format that they do here, but they have solid beers. But like all of Central, I don't know how much you remember of Central Avenue.
Yeah.
So all of Central inside 640 has become what I've referred to as Brewers Row. There's like 6 or 7.
On Central Avenue?
Yeah. Elkmont, Else, Fanatic, Schultzbrow, and I'm sure I'm missing a couple other ones.
Where are they located on Central Avenue?
Like where Broadway splits?
I think so, yeah.
So like I don't know, the thing that I know that's been there the longest is the Knox County Schools like facilities office. Like it's the big building where all their like mechanics and electricians and all the people that do the periphery stuff for the school system. That's where the all their systems and stuff are, that they go, and like all the repairmen get all their supplies out of there. So I guess like 275, like coming out of downtown 275 north, you got like Baxter Avenue and Woodlawn, and then I don't know. You remember where where Eagles Eagle Distribution Center is?
Man, that's not. Oh man, I used to remember where that was. Yeah.
All right. So references we know: Merchants going towards town.
Yes.
So go straight through. Don't get on 640. The first exit on 275. Once you pass 640, I can't remember the name of that off the top of my head. But if you get off there and go left, Central is right there, and Central goes from there all the way into town. And so like starting right there, right at whatever exit I can't think of right now, that's where Eagles Center Distribution Center is. Right across the railroad tracks is Fanatic. Fanatic is Marty Vallis. I like that guy. He's a really cool dude. He was Smoky Mountain Brewery's Grand Wizard.
Okay.
And he left Smoky Mountain Brewery and started his own.
Which their beer was never good.
Well, then you probably won't like his either. He's got some solid stuff. I like his okay, but they're very.
It was good for Knoxville at the time.
I don't know how to describe. Like they're not. None of them are stylistically accurate. I guess like his blonde is a blonde. His red is not really a red. His black is not a black. His black is more like a black ale than it is like it's a very light bodied beer, but it's dark colored. His Radler is really popular. A lot of people like his Radler. And that's the one he's canning, going back to the beginning of the conversation. But Fanatic is right there, and as you're going into town from there, Else Brewery, that's the guy that's my neighbor. Not my neighbor, but well, he's kind of my neighbor, but my kid's scout friend's dad is right there. Elkmont Exchange, or Elkmont Brewery, and they're canning, and they're in most of the food cities and shit around here. That is one of the brands I carry for my day job. Schultzbrau's in there. What else am I missing? I know I'm missing like 2 or 3 more.
Well, these aren't breweries, but the two places that I was visiting, or like I discovered, like at the tail end stay of my Knoxville, really, that was Beard and Beer Market and Central Flats and Taps,
Mm-hmm.
that I kind of grew to love. But what I was bringing up about Balter Brew Works, they're on Broadway, South Broadway is where they're located at.
Yeah, that's probably about the same. That's the same area. I
Yeah,
mean, and that's right there, like because Broadway and Central split, and Broadway goes up into Fountain City, and Central goes Central.
it's on that weird corner, like where that weird lot is. So like Jackson, Oak, and Broadway meet. Like World's
Right,
Fair
yeah.
Park, like is underneath it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, this is further. This is a little further up, but not
You know,
far.
it used to be like an old gas station or something. It's kind of interesting, kind of little building.
Oh, is that what Balter
Yeah.
is?
Yeah,
Because
that's
that was
Balter Beer
BP
Works.
for a while. I remember when one of the guys from Downtown Gruen Brewery opened that
If you
place up.
haven't been there, go there for their happy hour. It's just like $1.50 street tacos, like $2 or $3 queso. It was all really solid. We were going to watch we were parked there to go watch a show at the Mill and Mine. And I was pleasantly surprised by the facility and the food and everything as well.
Yeah, they're redoing that whole viaduct right there too, and there's a whiskey distillery I think in there now. There's some distiller in there. There's a bunch of stuff that's going in there. It's becoming pretty happening.
Now, has Peyton Manning's restaurant opened up downtown?
No,
What? I didn't even hear about that.
I had heard about it, but I hadn't heard anything other than it was happening. But it's not happening yet.
Well, he just released a bourbon,
I did see that. Yeah.
very expensive. It's like $200 a bottle, very limited. I think it's only aged like 10 or 12 years. Which for me, I'm like, damn, Eagle Rare's aged 10 years for like $38, and it's won a lot of awards. I'll probably just go with Eagle Rare instead. I love you, Peyton, but don't love you that much.
Yeah. Well, you gotta. Sometimes the stigma is gonna outlet. I mean, it's gonna sell.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
But I know I brought up WWE a little bit, but like I love The Rock. The Rock's tequila for $30 is money, and it's $30.
Kind of hurts my feelings. Like, shouldn't he be like, what's the native drink of Polynesians? He's not. He shouldn't be making a tequila. Well, I guess Sammy Hagar's got tequila too. He's Polynesian or Samoan. They're close enough. All right, I'm an asshole. Thanks.
But he
It's
was
within a
the
few thousand miles. Yeah.
Well,
He is the
both are a
people's
few
man,
thousand miles
so-
from Mexico, so I don't want to hear that shit.
Yeah. But, he likes what he likes. People's Champ made the People's Tequila, $30. That's for the people, man.
It's pretty solid. I've been wanting to try Dan Aykroyd's vodka. I'm not a big vodka person, but he was
I'm not a
on.
big vodka person.
He's I listen to Rogan a lot, and he was on Rogan, and good God, he's a salesman, if nothing else. Dan Aykroyd
So,
is
did
a salesman.
you read the recent story? So, Rogan and I just went blank. Post Malone just did like a 3.5 hour podcast.
I mean, that's normal for Rogan.
Well, they ate shrooms before they did podcast.
What?
That's not abnormal for Rogan either.
Yeah. I thought most hits for like an hour and a half long.
No, his average in the 3-hour range.
Really?
Yeah, like, cause it's funny because I mean, for the day job I drive a lot, and so that's why one of the reasons I like listening to him, because I like the long form, and that's kind of part of why why we do a 2-hour show. Generally, we
Yeah.
didn't do it on purpose. We just started, and the first couple episodes were 2 hours, and so that's kind of the mark we shoot for. Because I mean, people get random and talk about random stuff, and some of it's boring and weird, but every once in a while you get some great gems, and you can't structure finding those gems most of the time.
Well, I will say this: when I started off doing my podcast, doing an hour by yourself is fucking tough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and not to downplay how awesome you are as a guest, but one of the reasons we really wanted you as a guest is that Sam and I apparently have the least other things going on in our lives, and so we've had a couple episodes in a row where it's just me and him, and
More low key.
right. And I mean, I enjoy them, but like the podcast was built around the four of us being all together, and just different shits going on. Like last week I was out of town, but I could still figure out how to call in. But the week before that, Well, both of the last two episodes, Max was in Mexico, and so he wasn't able to. And then AC, our resident medical professional, has been real busy with this COVID mess, and so he usually doesn't work Saturdays, and he's just kind of gotten stuck working a bunch of Saturdays in a row, and that's when our time is. And so, we could have episodes that will go an hour and a half, and it's like, God, this is dumb. We're wasting everybody's time. And then when that last half hour, all of a sudden things start popping off, and it's super fun.
Yeah. Hey, if you ever need somebody to fill in, you got my number. Always let me know. I'm happy to always be a guest. I usually don't go in with a script a lot of times, so I can fill in a lot of times with no script and just bullshit my way through. I mean, that's how you get to the top anyway, right?
Exactly. And that's fine. I mean, and I especially as things start getting rolling in football, regardless of fantasy, because I don't think I'm doing fantasy this year. We had a great league going. We had a league about 10 years, Max and a bunch of different people. But then there was a divorce and an affair and all sorts of crazy shit, and that league fell apart. And I just don't like. I don't have the desire like I used to. Like, it was really fun, but it was really fun because of that set that I had. And I don't know if I can get that back, and maybe that's why I'm hesitant to do it again.
When you have a league like that, it kind of fuels others. So I'll tell you, let me go on a little ramble about my home league. It started on a little corner house. The name of the league is First and Maple. That's the corner that we lived on. But 5 of us lived there already. Like, it was $600 rent for the entire house, and 5 of us lived there. So when you're in college, that's like a dream scenario. You're paying like $125 a piece. That's gold, buddy.
Hold on, I'm gonna interrupt with math. 120. Go ahead.
Whatever. but it started off there, and then most of us, the majority of the group, have known each other since we were like 5 years old. So like a lot of old shit gets brought up randomly,
right?
And then we've kind of taken it to the next level. Like, dude, we have an official NWO World Heavyweight Championship belt. That's our title.
Right.
I just had a logo made for the league with like the outside of the house and like all of us standing on top of it. We all have shirts with our name on it. Like, today we actually selected divisions. So the way that we do divisions is the champion, the runner-up, and the regular season winner or highest scorer are at the top of the 3 divisions. And then you do a division draft. So the champion chooses one person, the second chooses one person, the third. And then whoever the champion selected gets to call out the next person. So you're creating like instant heat,
right?
Right off the bat.
Well, and the champion's drawing dogs, right? He's trying to draw the worst.
He's trying to. Okay. I've called him out publicly on my podcast twice, and he tried to avoid me. But the person he called out called me out, so he didn't get to run for me. So, there's just like little things like that go on. And like, man, one of my buddies I've had on the show, we nicknamed him Voodoo, because it was just one of those random situations where like he would be playing you on a Monday night and he'd be up by like 5 points and you got like a stud going. And then you're like, stud gets hurt in the first quarter and is only out for that game. So we nicknamed him Voodoo. And so, and he'll post like Paul Bearer impersonation videos, Stone Cold impersonation videos. So like when you have shit like that going on, it's like easy to like, okay, well, I got my main league. Let me just hop in like 2 or 3 other leagues. Like I'm in 2 dynasty leagues in that league. And then I joined like a couple others. But this is the one that you want to win. Like we have a cabin for Labor Day weekend on the lake. We stay Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I don't work at Cheddar's anymore, so I don't get free ribeyes. I used to roll in with like 12, 20-ounce bone-in ribeyes, like 12 half-rack ribs. I would just start stockpiling around this time of the year. So when you have something like that going on, it's very easy to be involved in. And then if you're going to get back into fantasy, don't get back into it this year, certainly with COVID and everything. This would be a fucking train wreck. I mean, and for me, I do take a lot of pride.
That gives me a chance to win because I can't figure out how to win, so maybe I can win in the shit show.
Yeah. I mean, I take a lot of pride in being a good commissioner, being ahead of things, and I try to do something every year to improve the league. whether that be our draft location, swap into an auction draft, whatever. So, I take a lot of, but if you don't have a good commissioner, man, sometimes your league's just shit. I
Yeah.
mean, it's like being a manager. It's like if your manager shit, well, guess what? Your store's probably gonna be shit.
Yeah. Well, I
Get
mean,
over
we had it all good, and then yeah, just the world fell apart on us. So
affairs and bullshit going.
Yeah.
So, yeah, sometimes that happens.
Yeah.
Hey, I had guys go to prison. had to kick a guy out. We had multiple situations happen. The same guy filled in 2 years in a row, and I said, "Hey, what? You three were involved, so I'm going to draw names out of a hat, and whoever I pick is in." And one guy was just like, "No, man, I shouldn't have to, do this." I'm like, "Well, I really don't care what you think. Like, this guy's had to fill in twice because of circumstances that you have caused.
right.
So get over yourself." And, so I've dealt with a bunch of different shit. And, you get paid a big salary of fucking zero and 10 headaches a year. But, I love it. But it is one of those like irritating things. Like you've been a manager before and it's like, "Hey, we should probably do this." And you're like, "Hey, yeah, we've been doing that for the last 7 fucking years. How about you just let me do my job, man?"
Right. Yeah, I mean, like I said, like the premise is cool to me, and I really I'd like to get back into it, but that one was so good for so long, and it's like it's not gonna come back that way. And I don't know. I've kind of fell out of my love for the game as a whole, mostly because I quit gambling as much.
Well, you and me had many conversations on Sundays before kickoff about. I always took your advice. What was the big tip you gave me in college football? The over 70, take it.
Yeah, oh, hell yeah, especially back when RG3 was playing.
Yeah,
Any Baylor game, take the over.
Baylor game.
Yeah.
I think we met. I think we met after Colt Brennan in Hawaii, but that would have been a key time as well.
Right.
I will say this. So we swapped to auction draft, and I actually bought auction software. So I take my computer, I hook it up to a big screen TV, and everybody has like a Jeopardy buzzer in their hand, and it's all done by the computer, other than your bidding. And so you're in a room with 12 people, and it's like Christian McCaffrey's on the board. So you're staring down the person bidding against you. And man,
Right.
it gets intense sometimes. Like it's a whole different dynamic of snake draft. Cause like your number 1 pick or number 7 pick. Okay, you're number 7. You're not getting Christian McCaffrey. You're not getting Ezekiel. That's Saquon Barkley. Auction draft, you got a $200 budget. If you want to go get that guy, fucking go get him. There ain't nobody stopping you, buddy.
Right. Yeah, I'd have to probably spectate on one of those before I really felt comfortable getting in that game, because I'd be the guy that blows
There's
my
no
load.
prep for it. I tell everybody the same thing because it's all based on your league. There's no cheat sheet for it. There's no
So it goes. So okay. So explain that. So it goes down like the standard, the magazines put out their top 20, and it starts at number 1 on this is the most likely to produce the most.
Christian McCaffrey's number 1 right now.
Right, and so it goes by who should be the number 1 pick, and then you guys are betting or auction bidding on.
Yeah.
So it's not your pick 1 and you get to pick whoever. It's
no, the strategy involved in auction is essentially, so if you're in the number 1, you nominate somebody. So the strategy a lot of times is nominating players you don't want, so that you can get that money off the board or see the value. Like, let's say you want Christian McCaffrey. Well, I'm going to nominate Ezekiel Elliott.
right. Let
And
somebody
see what
burn off some cash and their number 1 running back,
Right.
so that somebody else at a couple picks later is going to do McCaffrey, and then you get the bidding war with them, and hopefully they don't have as much money anymore.
Correct. So that's a lot of times what happens. And man, I've watched a guy go in there 2 years ago, and he's like, "I'm going balls deep on Antonio Brown, Todd Gurley, and Ezekiel Elliott," and he dropped like 75% of his budget on 3 players. Next thing we know, he's like Uncle Rico out in my front yard drunk, trying to throw the football over the mountains. But he had his 3 players. He didn't give a shit.
Right. I might have to look into that. Not this year, obviously, but I mean, I don't know. I just don't get. I don't know. Like I got out of it because like I was always a homer. One of the reasons I didn't like it was I was always a homer. I'd always take all my Packers. I'd be pissed off when I didn't get Rodgers.
I've so Monty Ball. I bring this up on my podcast all the time. He fucking burned me one year so bad that I've been able to wean myself off of Broncos. Where I'm just like, all right, don't fucking make the homer pick. It never ends up good. So I've been able to avoid that. Now, however, if you had like the Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams stack, or if you had had a Aaron Jones last year, you would have been just fine.
Right.
While we're talking about the Packers, let's talk about that first round pick real quick.
Oh, that's an interesting one. I don't know. I mean, it's they fired Thomas over the offseason. They got a new GM. And so I don't know if it's the new GM trying to play the long game or if there's a medium game going on where he's going to get one season in and then try to get Rodgers off the salary.
So I've said this before and I'll say it again. There's a couple teams, the Raiders and the Broncos specifically, who have a lot of offensive talent around them. If the Packers try to dick over Aaron Rodgers and let's say Drew Lock doesn't perform, I would put money on John Elway going after Aaron Rodgers. Because Aaron Rodgers this is a young offensive group, but Aaron Rodgers comes to Denver. He's got a top 10 defense all of a sudden. And then he's got Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, Noah Fant, Melvin Gordon, Philip Lindsay, and KJ Hamler. And it's like, well, Aaron Rodgers has never had that in his career. The guy hasn't even topped. He's like 16 interceptions away from 100 interceptions. That's nuts.
Right.
And they've never drafted a offensive skill position in the first round since he has been the starter.
Yeah, I don't have an answer for how front office works in my Packers. But at the same time, I mean, Rodgers was what, a late first round pick?
Yeah, I want to say 26.
When Favre was Favre was still solid, but he wasn't the Favre. I mean, he was always solid, even in Minnesota, for Christ's sake. But I mean, Favre was at least age-wise. Okay, so that's the question, and I don't know the stat. You could probably pull this off the top of your head because you're better than me. How old was Favre when they drafted Rodgers?
I actually think they were the same age.
And this is me talking out of my ass, but is that the move? Is that it's we hit the nail on the head 15 years ago? Are we trying to hit the nail again?
The difference for me is that I'll say this. I'm usually wrong about quarterbacks in the draft. I've been right about 2 in my life.
Peyton Manning.
Andrew Luck, which everybody was right about, and Aaron Rodgers. I thought he went too late. So Jordan Love is not what Aaron Rodgers was at all.
Okay, but so sticking with who was with where the Packers sat, who would have been available to be the same deal
as an offensive player?
No, as the quarterback replacement. Because Rodgers was a 26 or 25. He was late.
Yeah.
Later than he should have been, obviously. And so again, it was Rodgers is the same age. It was about the same draft pick. I think they were I think it was like 29, 28. Oh no, yeah, 30.
They tried back up to get him.
Okay, but same deal though. I mean, they were late pick. I don't know. Maybe it's some stupid formula that they have on that's like carved into the desk. That's like your Hall of Fame quarterback is this old. If you're in the mid to late 20s in your draft pick, you pick the quarterback. and in 3 years you're going to have the next one, and we're going to be another perfectly transitioned quarterback team like we did from Favre to Rodgers, and now Rodgers.
Yeah, the difference for me is that so when Brett Favre was playing, nobody really made it to the age of 40. Nobody really made it to like the age of 38. And now all of a sudden you got Drew Brees, who's 41, 42. You got Tom Brady, who's 41, 42. Had Peyton not got hurt, probably would have been in the same boat. And it's just like things have changed. Aaron Rodgers hasn't took a lot of big hits.
I mean, I don't know that he's ever fully come back from that shoulder. Realistically, like I think he's physically there, but I don't think like the way the way he moves and the way he scrambles and the way he extends plays has fallen off since that injury.
It's hard to say because, like I said, they just haven't surrounded him with anybody.
That's that may, I mean, to say one is and one isn't the actual issue, but in watching as many games as I can get away with without paying for, without paying for or going to the bar to watch every single game.
Yeah.
To me, it seems that he is not the same scrambler that he used to be. I mean, fuck. And part of it was because, he didn't have the running back, but like there was 3 or 4 seasons in a row there he was leading rusher for like half the season.
So I have his stats sitting right here. He's never ran for more. He's ran for 300 yards once.
But I mean, how many games? There were years where he was the leading rusher in a game.
Oh, possibly, yeah.
Where he has not done that like he has since.
Yeah, so he got hurt. So I'm going to go back to 2016, right before he got hurt. 4,400 yards, 40 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. He got hurt, so we won't count that the next year. But then, like the next 2 years, 4,400 yards, 25 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. 2 interceptions.
Right.
And then 26 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. And I was talking about this on my podcast the other day where I was talking about Deshaun Watson. And they're like, yeah, you only threw 26 touchdowns. 26 touchdowns in the NFL, the majority of the time is going to rank you in the top 10.
Right.
Like, it's not a low number. He's only threw double-digit interceptions twice in his career. One of them was when he got the full-time starter gig, and the next one was like his 3rd year. So it's just like, man, he's got Devontae Adams. Aaron Jones blew up last year. When Aaron Jones blew up, they went 13-3.
Right.
But you see teams like Kansas City with Patrick Mahomes. Like, man, let's go get this guy, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, Sammy Watkins, Kareem Hunt, and then Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Why are we surrounding these guys with all this talent? But then you have a surefire Hall of Fame quarterback who is completely dominant that invokes fear in defensive coordinators, and you're like, we're not going to go get anybody.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I think Mahomes has got I think Mahomes is going to suffer from a smaller version. I think Mahomes is better. I think Mahomes is going to suffer from a smaller version of the Vic syndrome. People will figure him out. It's not going to continue like it has.
The problem with Mahomes is he's a pure passer. That's
true.
Scary
right
about Mahomes.
But his legs aren't going to keep up, and that's what makes him extra scary. And I think that's one of the things. And way back in episode 1 was the politics of sports, and it's always politics in sports is always a racial thing or whatever. It's like, you don't get. Historically, outside of more recently, like how many long-term, really great legs passers have there been? We got Cunningham.
But see, I don't think Mahomes is that guy. And this is me as a Denver fan, scared to death that Mahomes is the guy for the next 15 years.
Right.
He's not necessarily a big rushing quarterback. Now, does he get outside the pocket like Rodgers? Yes. But from a stat standpoint,
but that's what I'm saying. I don't think it's the stat though. I think it's the scramble, not the rushing yards.
Yeah.
Do they count? I mean, do they have that stat like completions in a scramble versus completions? I mean, I don't know. You're the fantasy guy.
Yeah, I don't think so. I haven't seen that. Going back, one thing I do want to bring up about Aaron Rodgers, though, is he was 36 last year. Peyton was 37 when, so Peyton was 37, 2 years removed from surgery when he threw for 55 touchdowns.
Right.
So we know that Aaron's more healthy. So, like I said, if Drew Lock doesn't perform in the next year or two, I could see John Elway going hard after him and saying, "Hey, man, look what Peyton did when he was 37 and 38."
Right, but I think the real illustration here, though, what just hit me when thinking about it, though, is like, I think we are of the tail end of the generation that is under the idea that you have that guy that only plays for one team.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and I mean Brady, Brady was going to retire a Patriot for fuck's sake. I've been betting on Brady retiring for like 3 years in a row now, and I've lost, and it upsets me greatly. But you know, like the idea, I mean, you know, Favre was going to retire a Packer, and that, I mean, as a Packer fan, that pissed me off that he didn't. I mean, he's always going to be a Packer to me, and that stupid Jets, and especially the Minnesota one, I'm just going to blank out of my memory.
I mean,
you know,
Michael Jordan's always going to be a Bull.
Right, and I think one of the things that kind of screwed it up, though, is I think Peyton screwed it up. You know, how many prior to Peyton has the Super Bowl post the team?
But with Peyton,
I mean, I think Peyton made the right move. I think realistically, and how the whole thing broke down.
Andrew Luck wasn't the prospect. Andrew Luck was the highest rated prospect since John Elway, who I know as a Denver fan, I'm a little bit biased, but coming out of college, that guy was the dude.
Right. Well, but I mean, so was Peyton back in the day, but.
Yeah. But even he wasn't rated, you know, even he wasn't rated like Elway was.
Right.
So had Luck not been coming out, I don't think Indy would have done that.
I mean, I agree. I agree with you. I'm just saying, like, realistically, we'll just stick with quarterbacks, just for simplification's sake. Like, how many quarterbacks have left their team that was their team for the majority of their career, that they made their career out of, that won Super Bowls with and whatnot, and then went on to those twilight years and won?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I mean, Montana.
Montana didn't win one with the Chiefs.
Right, and then, you know, Emmitt Smith, I mean, going out of quarterbacks, Emmitt Smith went to Arizona and just kind of played and was good, but not great. And,
I mean, Randy Moss didn't even win one with New England.
Right.
So for me, yeah, it was definitely a special situation. You'll never convince me that Peyton wasn't. I mean, granted, I know the Super Bowls are there, but I'll still take Peyton any day of the week. Just because I think Bill Belichick's probably the greatest coach in the NFL history.
Probably. And Peyton Manning's just playing funnier. I mean, we were talking about this a while ago, how great Peyton was on Saturday Night Live.
Oh, Saturday Night Live during the golf match. I mean, he's just...
Right. The progressive, was it, him and the country guy and the insurance commercials? They're great. I was watching, since SportsCenter's, or since ESPN's been struggling, they've been putting all sorts of random stuff out. And there was one where it's him and Chris Carter in New York.
Yeah.
Apparently there was some story from like early, like right when I think it was back in NFL time, where it's like a publicity stunt. One of the teams in the New York area at the time had a thing where they were throwing whoever the quarterback and receiver was throwing a pass off of the 50-something story of a building.
Yeah.
And it was Peyton and Chris Carter like reenacting it. And like that was, I mean, it's just like Peyton Manning is just fun to watch doing anything. I don't care.
He is.
Like Peyton Manning could be, if they rebooted what's the car show? Sam, help me out. The car show that the English guys, Top Gear.
Oh, Top Gear.
If they reboot, because Top Gear to me is not about cars. It's about three guys that are funny as shit hanging out with each other. If Peyton Manning was one of the guys on a reboot of Top Gear, it would sell.
So now, have you watched all the ESPN Plus things with him, 32 for 32 or whatever?
No, I don't have a job that pays more than unemployment.
Well, you know, it's like Disney plus Hulu plus ESPN Plus for like $12. But he does the whole 32 team tour. But what I was going to get to is I was going to go from who I think is the greatest quarterback of all time to another greatest of all time. And a lot of people didn't watch it because it was on ESPN Plus or ESPN, but now it's on Netflix. Did you watch The Last Dance over the 90s Bulls?
No, I haven't yet. It's on my agenda, but I have not watched it yet. I've heard many great things.
It's great. I mean, I think for me, Michael Jordan will always be the greatest of all time. We can have that argument if you want to.
And it's basketball. I don't care that much.
Yeah, but it's an insight to a dominant team, the thought process. I tell everybody the same thing after watching that documentary. If Jordan didn't play sports, he probably would have been a serial killer. Like his mind was wired that way, man. Like
right.
it was.
Right. Yeah, or he'd be a Bezos or some like.
Yeah, like those
like
guys are
ridiculous.
wired.
Right.
He was wired differently than most people in the league. Like it's cool to watch. It's cool to see that insight, but it's also cool to see a coach like Phil Jackson who knows how to harness that.
Right.
I tell everybody the same thing when I talk about basketball. Greg Popovich, who I think is one of the greatest coaches of all times, could not have won as many championships with the Chicago Bulls or the LA Lakers as Phil Jackson did. But Phil Jackson could not have won as many championships with the Spurs as Popovich. They're just two different coaches that knew how to get different results out of different teams.
Right.
Popovich didn't need these superstars. He needed different, the reason I bring that up, because I'm going to go back to Peyton Manning here, is that he took 4 different head coaches to the Super Bowl, man. Like,
yeah,
that's hard to do. He took 2 different teams to the Super Bowl twice, and had Joe Flacco not went on like this ultimate tear, he probably should have won another one in Denver. So it's just Bart Scott. I actually watched an interview with Bart Scott today, and he's like, Peyton was tougher to play against because Peyton, you had to have 2 playbooks. New England just had this offense, and they were about execution. Peyton had this offense based on the game tape he watched against your defense.
Right.
And he was going to do that. But the problem was Peyton figured you out as the game went on.
Right.
So he got better after every play. And so you had to, if you didn't evolve, you were screwed. And that was the difference for them when Bart Scott was talking about it.
Right. So all right. So I think this is a good question to close on. There's, especially here in Knoxville, everybody's like, Peyton's going to coach. Do you think Peyton will ever coach?
Peyton will never coach.
I don't think so either.
Peyton will never coach.
I was hoping that was going to be a conflict question, but
it's not.
I think exactly what you were saying right there is that he was the field general. He was on the field and he saw what was in front of him, and he only had 10 other guys that he had to keep on the same page. I cannot imagine him being able to handle any group of people that aren't 10,000% in understanding of what he's trying to get through.
It would be too frustrating for him not to be in control.
Right. And he would go, I don't think he could mentally handle it. I think he would just be like, no, I quit. This is done. You guys can't do what I'm telling you to do. And it's right there in front of you.
Not even just like a quarterback coach.
You know what I
No,
heard
because he's not on the field. Like, it's the quarterback coach has very little like real time action. Like, I mean, he could teach quarterbacks, but he couldn't be like a team coach. He could do like camps, which he does, I guess, already.
But what I always heard, and this was him being a quarterback, is he was never a great quarterback coach. He was a great wide receiver coach.
Right. Yeah.
So
That's a good point.
they could get on the same page. So like he can't read the quarterback's mind to do that with those group of wide receivers. So that would frustrate him even more. Now, the one thing I will say is this isn't necessarily related to him, but supposedly so who's the oldest brother? Cooper?
Yeah.
Cooper's son
It's supposed to be
supposedly like the next thing.
Well, we were talking about Cooper a while back, probably the same time we were talking about Peyton, is that the story was that he was the one until he got hurt.
Yeah, he was like the top athlete. He was the wide receiver, but now his son is a sophomore quarterback who I think is already like 6'5". Like, you can find highlights. The kid already throws like a beautiful ball. So it's scary. So, there's going to be teams like starting to tank for him early. He'll probably go to Ole Miss. and probably do nothing at Ole Miss, but then he'll come destroy the Patriots 2 times and win 2 Super Bowls like Eli did. But no, man, that's just there's very few families like that. That Archie, Eli, Peyton, Cooper should have been good. Now all of a sudden you got this nephew or son who's going to be the same thing. Some families are wired.
Who's it? Isn't it? God, who was it? There's somebody else's kid that's a wide receiver that's in college now. That's supposed to be the shit. It's a Hall of Fame wide receiver, and I'm blanking out.
I don't know, because like Randy Moss's son's a tight end.
Maybe that's who I'm thinking of. I don't know.
EO don't have one.
Jerry Rice.
No, Jerry Rice's kid's too old to play ball.
I was going to say he's probably too old.
Now that's the greatest football player of all time, in my opinion.
I'll tell you what, the Jerry Rice one, God, it was one of those NFL film things, and he was like on the sideline hanging out with whichever broadcast group he was with at the time, and whoever the quarterback was in the game, and they were fucking around pregame, and he's like, go run on whatever route, and he runs whatever route, and he's like, this field's wrong.
I was going to tell the same story. He ran an out route. When he caught the out route, his toes were out of bounds.
Right. And he's like, no, the field's measured wrong.
The field's wrong. And they're like, no, the field's right. And Jerry's like, the fucking field's wrong. He's like, I know my steps. So he went and told the refs, and after the game, they measured it. And it was like 3/4 of an inch off for some ridiculous shit. And Jerry's like, I know my steps.
Right. Yeah. That's
They fired that field painter.
Yeah. that line guy got a new job. All right. Well, Seth, close us out with your, whatever people want to hear about you, how to get in touch with you or your podcast or something like that, and
Sure.
We'll call it a night.
So first of all, thanks for letting me just fill in on the random. I will gladly do it anytime. But if you have any fantasy football questions, please hit me up on Twitter at FFOnTap, or you can follow me on Instagram at Commish Melton. We'll answer any questions through both those formats. But if you do listen, first of all, thank you to anybody who listens to this podcast and mine. We appreciate any listens that we get. And anybody who likes it, follows, shares, reviews it, that's the number one thing that you can do for all of us.
True story.
We appreciate your time. Whatever that platform is, I always tell my friends, hey, man, everybody's got iPhones. Still their phone for a second. Go to their podcast app. Go to Fantasy Football on Tap.
Almost in agreement.
And Almost in Agreement, and leave that 5-star review. Write something great, and that's all we can ask from you, because that's how we get our business built. So thank you all for listening and tuning in.
All right, Seth, thank you for being on the show. I've got to push some buttons and close this thing out, and we'll talk to you soon. Woo! All right, guys, that was episode 21. Our good friend Seth from Fantasy Football on Tap came out, and I don't know, we went through all sorts of random good stuff. Like I said, Monday, we've got a huge lineup on Monday. Hopefully I can get them all packed up and put out Monday evening. So all your local politics, if you're in the different districts that we're going to be interviewing people on, our primary and general election is on the 6th, so we're only a couple days out. So if you have any questions, almostinagreement@gmail.com. We are on Twitter. We are on Facebook. We are on YouTube. All your podcast channels. And like Seth said, just get on there and give us the thumbs up, the likes, the 5 stars, the whatever it is, because that's how we get more people to listen to the idiocy that is us. And that's all I've got tonight, Sam.
Thank you very much for listening. Really appreciate Seth being on there as well. Everyone, take care of yourselves.
That's right. Be safe out there, everybody, and we will touch base and be back with you in a couple days.